What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So, big things are currently happening with the Switch and the Nintendo Online service, specifically around that Nintendo app that we access the NES games through. Looks like those Super Nintendo games that we keep speculating about actually might be closer than we think. We're going to go over that because some interesting stuff was found in the code that not only points to Super Nintendo games, but possibly another system showing up, again, pretty rapidly as it's already being data mined and found in the app itself. So pretty interesting stuff there. And then, yeah, Activision still can't get out of their own way. Activision appears to be under investigation after the split from Bungie. We're going to talk about that as well. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Hit the like button. It does help out. We're actually going to start today with Final Fantasy X, X-2, and 12. Those are coming over to the Switch in April. We already talked about that, where you'll get 10, X-2 halfway through, and then at the end of the month, you'll get 12. And it's also going to the Xbox, but a lot of people were also wondering who's porting it. Looks like we actually have an idea here now. It's Virtuos who is porting these games. And if you don't know Virtuos, you may have already played some of their games actually on the Switch, and they've done a fairly good job. They helped with Starlink. They were the big studio that helped push Starlink out the door for the Switch. They also worked on L.A. Noire, which actually was a pretty good port. I think L.A. Noire, for the most part, on the Switch looked good. It played well. I played it for a bit, and it worked well, I'd say. And then they also did Darksouls Remastered that had some audio issues, and while it wasn't one of their best ports, it still was interesting to see that moved over to the Switch. For the most part, in good shape. Again, the audio being very low quality and compressed was a weird thing to see. But yes, Virtuos appears to be handling Final Fantasy X, X-2, and 12. And 10 and X-2, that shouldn't be an issue at all. I actually played that on my Vita. Yeah, I was playing that one there, and I remember when the Vita, and this is going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on because I don't think it'll be a problem here. I think they're both going to come on the cartridge together because they should both fit on an 8GB cartridge without any issues. But with the Vita, I believe 10 was on the cartridge, and then X-2 was a download code that came with it. So we'll keep an eye on that one, but so far, we're going to talk about the box art here in a second. None of that white banner stuff is on the box art, which, speaking of the box art, it's a very odd situation with it, because it seems like the US is getting the better box art for 10 and X-2, and then Japan is getting the better box art for 12. Here are actually some images of the box art, and yes, you can see 10 and X-2 look better on the US side, whereas in Japan it's basically the white background with the logos. But then if you shift over to 12, it looks way better in Japan with the really nice artwork and everything there, and then of course we just get the standard white and then the logo right in the center. We're kind of, I guess we're trading off, but I think I'd rather have the 12 box art and let them have the 10 X-2 box art. It's just, I don't know, the 12 box art just looks really nice with that artwork and everything. But, I mean, they're all showing up anyway, and they're physical, which is great, because a lot of people were concerned about that. So we'll be looking forward to April to see those, and we'll see the kind of port that Virtuos puts out. However, they're doing pretty good work with other games, so I think this should be, especially 10 and X-2, should be no problem. We had also talked about THQ Nordic bringing a bunch of different games to the Switch, kind of their back catalog, older games, like Sphinx, for example, that was on PC, and I actually got it and played it there, and it was a game I played way back in the day during the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era. I remember playing it. I think I had it on the GameCube and I had it on the PS2 at one point. It's kind of hard to remember exactly where I played it, but I played it back then, I got it on the PC, and now it is coming to the Switch. We talked about that. We do have release dates. They kind of just showed up on the eShop. There was no actual announcement that I could see. They just, seriously, just dropped on the eShop. I was looking through and I was like, oh, there's all of the THQ Nordic games just kind of here. So let's go over those release dates very quickly and pricing. We have The Raven Remaster, January 22nd, $30. Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, January 29th, that's $30. So all of these games you're hearing about are actually showing up like within the next 5 weeks or so. The Book of Unwritten Tales 2, February 5th, also $30. And Rad Rogers is February 26th, $30. So Sphinx coming up here, that's the big one out of the four that I would look towards. That's January 29th, so right at the end of this month at $30. I like Sphinx. You'll have to decide if it's worth it for you at $30, as the game hasn't like aged super well, I'll say that. But if you remember playing it back then and you want to kind of get an HD version of it, it should look pretty good on the Switch. It doesn't take much of anything to run it on the PC at like highest details and everything, so I think it'll look pretty good on the Switch, probably 1080p, 720 and everything, and it'll be a better representation of what we played back in the day in like low resolution everything on the PS2 and Xbox and GameCube. And guys, with the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff, starting right away with the data mining of Super Nintendo games that currently reside in the Nintendo Online app. It's in there already. People have been data mining it, and they found all of these different strings of Super Nintendo games. They also found strings of code names for emulators, and the reason we know they're emulators is because we already know what 2 of them are. The other one's a mystery. Let's start with the games first of all, though. There is a large list of them. There's 22 currently. You're seeing the list actually here, and this was actually data mined by, if you go on Twitter, there'll be a link in the sources below if you'd like to look through it as well, from Cappuccino Heck. And if we go down the list, we have Super Mario Kart, which makes sense, right? Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past also makes sense. But get this, Demon's Crest. That's actually a pretty expensive Super Nintendo game that is kind of out of left field for just sitting in the app. Yoshi's Island, another good one. Stunt Racer FX. Kirby's Dream Course. Poppin' Twin B. Star Fox. Again, Star Fox, of course, makes a lot of sense. Contra 3. Kirby Superstar, which is also really cool to see in there. Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Kirby's Dream Land 3, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, F-Zero, Star Fox 2, Super Punch-Out. Also good to see Punch-Out, by the way, because we don't have the regular Punch-Out yet. Legend of the Mystical Ninja, another kind of off-the-wall one to see in there. Really cool. Super Mario All-Stars, and then one that I was really excited to just see in here randomly, Breath of Fire 2. Now, they're missing some stuff. Everyone's pointed it out. There's no Chrono Trigger. There's no Final Fantasy VI. There's no Earthbound. But this is a good start. Again, start. The other interesting thing about this is there are 22 of them in here now. We started with 20 NES games. Now, I don't necessarily think they're just going to say, there's 20 Super Nintendo games and then we'll provide, 2 a month or something going forward along with like 2 Nintendo games per month. That would be really cool. But there's a possibility that what we're looking at here is like a year's worth of Super Nintendo games, and we already know about all of them. We just got to figure out when they're all going to start dropping on the application. That's the thing there. So yes, some are missing, and if that is the case, and this is a year's worth, not necessarily like the first month and like the first month after that, right? So you have the first month and the second month with 2 more games. It'd be a while before you see Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI or Earthbound or any other big RPGs that you would like, or of course action games. I understand why there's no Mega Man here, because they have the Legacy Collection. That makes sense, I guess, at this point. But yes, some of the bigger games are not necessarily there, but if they have Super Nintendo games, they drop them like that. They're already in the application. They just go snap their finger and say, hey, they're all available. That would get some people maybe rethinking the idea of subscribing to this service. Now, I also mentioned that there were emulators that were being found here as well, and it does appear that there is at least one emulator that we don't know about, and it's kind of a confusing thing right now, so I'm going to kind of go over it with you. Here's actually the tweet from Oatmeal Dome that you're seeing, and you notice that they have a few already picked out, saying that they were looking through the NES Switch app, and they point out a few. They point out the Kachachi NES Classic, the Canoe, the Super Nintendo Classic, and they have two more underneath that. The Hyoko, which is a question mark, and then Count, also question mark. Now, people down in the different comments and the threads, they mentioned that Count might actually literally be the count of emulators that is part of the coding. So Count would actually be 3. And that means, of course, there are 3 emulators in there. But I know what you're thinking, and I'm kind of thinking the same thing here. When I look at Hyoko, and of course, we have the standard transition, the Nintendo to the Super Nintendo, and then the Super Nintendo to what else? The Nintendo 64. I'm thinking it as well, I understand. But here's the thing. Those 2 emulators above it for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo are also the same emulators that are used in the classic systems that are set up to work on an ARM chipset. So if the Nintendo 64 emulator would also be set up for the ARM chipset, it might be the same emulator that could be used in the Nintendo 64 Classic that we all believe is coming possibly this year, maybe later on this year. That would be amazing, because that would actually point to Nintendo 64 games existing on the Switch and then also being a classic system. So there's a lot to take in here, and if that is the possibility in the case. However, that could also be a Game Boy emulator, right? It could be Game Boy games coming over. That's not out of the question. But I think we all want 64. I don't think there's a GameCube emulator here yet. I don't know if that would make sense in this setting at $20 per year. Again, I think Nintendo would rethink that and try to figure out how to charge more. But right now, it's looking good if you want Super Nintendo games on your Switch, because it seems like they're there, the emulator's there. We're kind of just waiting for them to flip the Switch, essentially, add everything, and just go. They're Super Nintendo games, go for it. So this is exciting stuff, and there's a rumored direct that we're all thinking is coming at some point. maybe Super Nintendo games show up sooner than even I thought, because I thought they would show up when the 12-month subscriptions in September start going up and they have to drop something big to keep you invested. Maybe they just want to get them out now. Next up, let's talk about Activision. Now, of course, we talked about the Activision-Bungie split. Bungie retains rights to Destiny, and Activision just kind of leaves. They just walk the other way, and Bungie goes the other way, and I guess everything's fine. At least it seemed that way until, of course, the stock for Activision fell off a cliff. And since then, investors have been kind of shaking their heads and, of course, scratching their heads because they're trying to figure out, did Activision know this was happening? Was there insider trading going on? Was stock sold off? Was this all on the up and up? And we're getting now an investigation apparently into Activision that is happening. Yes, this is actually reported by MarketWatch after they put out a press release stating that Pomerantz LLP is investigating claims on behalf of investors of Activision Blizzard. So what is happening? Well, the investigation concerns whether Activision and certain of its officers and or directors have engaged in securities, fraud, or other unlawful business practices. Now, this is not uncommon for a big company that has something this massive. I mean, this came out of nowhere, right? Like, I remember it just dropped online and we were all kind of like in a daze. We were like, they're splitting up. This is insane, right? It just seemed like it was almost out of nowhere for a lot of us. Now, we had heard rumblings that there was strife going on between Bungie and Activision, but to just split and give Destiny to Bungie, because I can tell you now, the investors, while they, of course, a lot of them and Activision took Destiny for granted, right? It was never up to what they wanted it to be. It always failed expectations. You still just lost a pretty big revenue stream. That thing grossed, what, $320-something million in like its first few days when Destiny 1 came out, right? So that's a lot of money to just lose, and they spent a lot of time and energy building that IP that now Bungie is going to walk off with and work to profit from. So yeah, I get that. But to see it go this far already and there's an investigation forming around Activision after losing Bungie and Destiny, it's not been a good start to the year so far for Activision. So we'll see what happens here. I don't know if nothing's really happened like that, Activision's not going to care. They're going to say, hey, go and investigate us. We're going to keep moving forward because nothing bad happened. We'll see though. I mean, this is kind of how the ball gets rolling and the snowball starts going down the hill and gets larger and larger. So we'll see what happens here. But for now, yeah, Activision appears to be under investigation. We'll just see how far it goes. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that Resident Evil one-shot demo because it is awesome. If you have not played it, I recommend trying it out. It's free. You can download it on the Xbox, the PC, or the PlayStation, and you can try it out. I enjoyed it. I played it on the Xbox One X, and then I also downloaded it on the PlayStation so I could run through it. I ran through it first on the Xbox, then I ran through it again on the PlayStation, and it is amazing. I am very happy to see Resident Evil 2 actually getting a solid remake, and Capcom definitely spent some time and some money and some effort on this thing, so I'm really excited about it. It's coming out at the end of this month, but people are not happy with that 30-minute limit. That's something I'm not happy with either because I wanted to keep playing and just kind of exploring and checking it out. People have been speed running it as well, but of course, people want to really look everywhere in that demo. So PC gamers actually took, matters in their own hands, and they have developed a crack. That's right. It just gets rid of the 30-minute time limit. Now you need a clean account for it, so you can't have already played it at all. But when you use the crack and you actually install it, it gets rid of that 30-minute time limit. So what are people doing? Well, they're exploring everything already, and they're also data mining it, and they're finding out a bunch of extra details. Now, nothing seems to point to story spoilers, but they're finding different modes that we don't know about yet that exist in the game files, different characters that appear to be playable. I'm being fairly vague here just in case, so I don't spoil anything crazy for you. Maybe you've even just avoided all of the preview coverage. I don't know. But yes, it looks like this game is going to be pretty big. I was concerned because Resident Evil 2, the one on the PS1, it's not a particularly long game, but it sounds like some of the stuff coming out, they have some ideas on how to kind of lengthen the game a bit. So it's looking good. I'm excited. After playing the demo, I'm ready. I was trying to pick out what I was going to play first, this or Kingdom Hearts 3. I think it's going to be Resident Evil because Resident Evil 2, the remake, it's looking really good. I recommend just going out trying it. It's pretty cool. Even if you're concerned about the 30-minute limit, you're like, I don't want to get pushed through it. Just play it and enjoy it. Because again, you're going to start it all back up again anyway when the game comes out. If you like it, it's just worth checking out because it really is one of the best games Capcom's put out in a while just by looking at the demo. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is these 22 Super Nintendo games being found in the Switch's NES app. Let me know what you think about that, because it is technically called the NES application right now. Do they change the application to what it's called? Is it now just called the Nintendo Online app and they have pictures of different controllers and stuff on there? So, it's pretty cool. Do you think that also means that it's coming soon and not later on this year? Let me know about that one. And then, did you try the Resident Evil demo? Let me know your thoughts on that as well. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.